story is Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Kim, you wrote this baby. The three of us, Elise and Kim and I, were out at Naughty Dog a couple weeks ago to check out this game. What did you guys think?
So if you liked what they did in Uncharted 4, they're kind of expanding on that with bigger spaces. I mean, we saw an area that was bigger than Madagascar and probably one of the biggest areas they've ever done. I think it's interesting that after being with Nathan Drake for 10 years, we're finally stepping into the shoes of someone else, Chloe, who we've known for the past in the series, but we've also known her as not always the nicest person or making the best choices.
You know,
not exactly heroic.
She feels a lot like Catwoman. It's one of those things that I kept thinking about on the trip, but never asked. It's like there's a real Catwoman vibe to Chloe.
It's that she has a loose moral compass,
I guess
right?
That's what
I think that's the
I just think she's always looking out for number one, and when she gets into bad situations, like when Jeff the cameraman fell, she's not gonna help with that.
Yeah.
She's gonna be like, that's someone I have to leave behind because I want to get, which is actually really interesting. So this is actually even more interesting because it's also taking us to India, which will explore Chloe's heritage. She's half Indian.
Yeah, it seems like the larger story is about her trying to uncover her history with her
This
parents.
is a lot
and
about Chloe's backstory and her kind of like repressing that culture of hers for so long and now coming back to it, and it ties into her relationship with her dad, who's an archaeologist.
Yeah.
So we find out a lot more about that, and also it's about Chloe and Nadine being a very like unlikely duo together, and how they are similar in the way that they're both self-preservationists, but also very, very different in terms of personality. Like, Nadine is a lot more business-like and in that way, and then Chloe kind of just does her own thing.
She's
right?
rash.
Yeah. So they pitched it very much as, Chloe's the star of the show. It's a lot about her history. And Nadine is certainly going to be a focus as well. But they made an interesting analogy where basically Nadine is to Chloe for Lost Legacy what Sam was to Nathan for Uncharted 4.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exactly the same kind of thing. Like, you play as Chloe only, but then Nadine's kind of your sidekick, but you also it's also about that relationship between the two.
Yeah. So the development of this game, it's really bizarre. It seemed like a big driving message when we were there visiting Naughty Dog was like, hey, we have 1 year. What can we make? That year development timetable was talked about again and again and again. And so it started out as DLC for Uncharted 4 that they didn't know exactly what they're going to do. They tossed around a million ideas. Then they even tossed out some ideas where it's like, this is on the scale of what should be like an Uncharted 5. Not saying it exists, but they use that kind of in a loose term of like the scope of theoretically. And now it is in a bizarre middle realm where it's not quite Uncharted 4. It's longer than Left Behind.
What was interesting to me is it really does feel like an extension of Uncharted 4.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like an Uncharted 5, and it shouldn't. But it's definitely it's like a longer DLC. It does seem that way to me.
As Josh, co-writer, called it, downloadable Chloe. And then
Downloadable Chloe.
Everyone got a good chuckle out of that one.
I think for the story they wanted to tell, and because they hadn't really delved into the backstories of Chloe or Nadine, I felt like I didn't even know Nadine at the end of Uncharted 4.
She can throw a punch.
That's all I took away from it. So I think because they want to go there, they had to extend it out to tell the story that they wanted to tell. And like I said, I think they didn't have time to go too crazy, so building on the tools, like everything's back from Uncharted 4
to a surprising degree. I think that was a big takeaway from the demo we saw. Was
the driving, the piton,
the rope. It's like, oh, these are just Uncharted 4 mechanics. Like, I don't know what I was expecting, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I did feel like there's a lot that's similar, that's almost rehashed in a way from what we know.
Yeah, do you guys feel disappointed by that you didn't see anything that wasn't like
a little bit
mechanics that weren't rehashed
Well,
mechanics?
I wanted to see maybe a few, like a new mechanic or two. I mean, Chloe is different than Nathan Drake. She does not have a journal like he has. There's going to be something on her phone that she does to collect stuff, but there's not that much.
It's small differences. The things that are new are small differences. Like there's a lock picking.
But I don't think you should go in expecting
brand
new Uncharted mechanics.
No, I didn't expect it at all. I would have liked her to have one extra thing, I think, with climbing that she does in a different way, or maybe she does something different in battle.
But go ahead. Jeremy.
Yeah, did Left Behind have any new mechanics? Like,
no.
What a great question.
Don't think so.
I mean, I don't think it did either.
It was a twist on them, know, with like the squirt gun fight and stuff.
There are little mini games in there that were different.
Right.
I mean, I think there's a hint of this in Last of Us, but in Left Behind, it certainly played with the idea more of kind of like pitting the humans, versus the enemies against each other a little bit more. Remember that like final area where you could kind of make them take each
Oh
other
yeah, you
out?
can make them fight each other.
So if you want to call that a system, maybe there's
Yeah.
introducing a little bit more. But
And sorry, I feel like they also weren't going to spoil bigger moments in that game. So like they keep claiming they are going to a new, like, the big set pieces are going to be there, kind of everything you loved with Uncharted. So
yeah,
I expect that like those set pieces are going to be what's really memorable kind of about the game, as it always is.
Yeah.
And like we didn't get to see any of that, but they assure us they're there.
and they had an interesting take on it too, where they're like, with kind of like the pirate theme for Uncharted 4, the architecture for the pirates, you can't be too extravagant. It's tough to get like big set pieces out of that type of theme. But going to India, I mean, just the second section of the demo that we saw, it looked gorgeous. It was
Yeah, it was so
giant
nice.
elephant statues with waterfalls running over them, and I think the environments are going to be the thrill, and the story is going to be the thrill more
definitely.
than the gameplay.
No, absolutely. Like I think gameplay wise, it is absolutely going to be an extension of Uncharted 4. But I think story wise and character wise, like we're going to see a lot of interesting new ideas.
Yeah,
and I think India is going to be such a great place for Uncharted.
And to be fair, as someone who's never like been into Uncharted, I found Uncharted 4 to be like leaps and bounds as far as gameplay goes, better than any of the 3 that came before.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think like, oh, this is just Uncharted 4 in a different setting with different characters is necessarily a bad thing, because it's the first one I actually enjoyed playing all the way through, like the act of actually playing it.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
And I mean, it is an expansion. They only had a year. I don't expect
Right.
expect a whole brand new game, but like I said, it would be. I'm interested to see what other mechanics they kind of maybe have along the way, because every time we play these games, there's always only so much they tell us on the cover story, and then you play them and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. I had no idea that was coming. So I'm interested for the set pieces.
Yeah, and I like the idea of continuing the Uncharted universe without Nathan Drake. I think that's bold, and I think that's great, because especially since he was the face of the series for so long, and Nadine, we don't know much about her, like Kim said, and Chloe's been a fan favorite for so long, and putting those two together seems so strange at first, but now after talking to the team, I kind of understand a bit more their motivations for that. So
yeah, it's fun to talk to them. We have a feature going up later in this month just about the idea of having a big game that stars 2 women. It's a little bit different for the industry, and I think they're proud of it, but it wasn't like their mission statement of like, no matter what, we got to get 2 women in this game.
I think really they did absolutely say that they explored their options, and they're just like, no, this is really what seemed most interesting to us.
They said that they didn't get any resistance from Sony as far as like, 2 women, I don't know if it's going to sell. It's like, it's Uncharted. It'll sell fine, everybody. Let's do something cool.
Yeah.
And they drove around in the first section of the demo we saw. What they were very clear to point out is a rusty red Jeep. It is not a pink Jeep. It's not a pink Jeep.
It's a rusty red Jeep.
But that is the big environment that you were talking about, Kim. It's big, but it's not, from the section we saw, and there's, I'm sure, other big environments as well. But it's not like a wide open expanse like Madagascar was in Uncharted 4. It's very much, you remember the, spoiling anything, vaguely, kind of the Elena Nathan section where you're driving the Jeep kind of around the waterfalls in Uncharted 4. It felt a lot like that type of kind of labyrinthine environment where you can kind of try to navigate around these rocks and water.
They also said they're going to try to put more stuff for you to collect around the world, and also more puzzles, because people wanted more puzzles. But not pushing boxes, which they were very clear that they heard the criticism from Uncharted 4 on that.
There's going to be some sort of nod to that, a joke about crates somewhere in the game.
There's definitely, I really enjoyed the moment where it's like, hey, what's your guys' approach to like crates? You're going to be sliding around crates in this one? And then the game director, Kurt, kind of just gave a quiet, why do you ask? I've played a lot of Naughty Dog games, just curious if that's going to be a thing.
Right.
So they are aware of the few criticisms that Uncharted 4 had.
Mm-hmm.
They're definitely applying it to this more streamlined, bite-sized experience. But what do we have coming up throughout the month? We're rolling out a whole month of coverage on this thing.
Oh gosh, yes. We have interviews, obviously, with all the developers who worked on it.
Yeah.
We'll be looking at like the new vision for it. We have 2 guys who are taking the reins, a creative director and director. So
yeah, Kurt and Sean.
Yeah,
getting them on camera and whatnot. We talked to Kurt for the Uncharted 4 cover story a little bit, but Sean, we've never really focused on at Naughty Dog. He's a really interesting developer, so a lot of interviews with him throughout the month. And then also we talked to Evan, co-president of Naughty Dog. Yeah. Neil Druckmann, got a video interview with him and whatnot. So it's going to be partly about Uncharted Lost Legacy. The month of coverage is also going to touch a little bit on the nebulous future of Naughty Dog. They're not saying, hey, here's the plot of Last of Us 2, but just the future of development within Naughty Dog. Also talked all about their favorite moments from Uncharted 4. So if you're interested in Uncharted 4 spoilers coming from Naughty Dog, stay tuned towards the end of the month. There's a good video coming there. Elise, do you have a feature you're excited to get writing on?
Yeah, I think there's two that I'm most excited about. So I'm going to write about that unlikely duo thing of Nadine and Chloe together.
Yeah.
And what makes them work and also why they don't work that well together and how that they start trusting each other as the story goes on.
Yeah.
So I'll talk about that. And I'm also excited to talk about diversity and Naughty Dog, just talking about what that's like to put two women on their game cover. And yeah, so
I think if you capture the quotes, that's going to maybe be the most interesting article of the month.
Yeah,
outside of Kim's wonderful cover story, just best of the best, cream of the crop.
Yeah,
best in the biz.
Yeah, I'm curious to write that one up, and I think Nadine and Chloe are going to be two good protagonists.
Yeah, so it's GameInformer.com/The Lost Legacy,
yes.
I do believe. So check it out, month of coverage. Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can click right here if you want to subscribe and listen to the audio version of the full show. Full episodes air every Thursday, and they feature Game Informer editors sitting around talking about the biggest reviews, previews. We talk about exclusive impressions of Game Informer's cover stories. We have long-form developer interviews, everything that's great in gaming. So every Thursday, be sure to check it out.